Okay, how's the sound? All right, perfect. Well, hello, everybody. Oh, that's kind of weak. Hello. All right, thank you. Come on, we got to be energized. Last session, it's exciting. We're about to get your Revolutionary University diplomas. All right. So for our first session, we wanted to talk about the world that's possible. And I wanted to start with a poem that was written during the Russian Revolution. A poem that reminds us that the beast called capitalism can be defeated. Here, in the smoke of the wretched devil's Sabbath, in the noisy reign of petty demons, they said, there are no fairy tales on earth. They said, the fairy tale has died. Oh, don't believe it. Don't believe the funeral march. The hour has come for the beast's end. The old dragon will coil up and die. And today, we echo that poet. The fairy tale hasn't died. That dragon can be slain, and we have the power to do it. The problems we face under capitalism are seemingly endless. War, violence, exploitation, racism, environmental destruction, and the list goes on and on. But we don't have to accept our current world. If we work together to abolish capitalism, we can envision a radically different society, one in which we decide our future collectively in the interest of all of humanity and our planet. I think we can all agree on a few things. The first one being, the way things are is not because it makes the most sense. It's because that's what capitalism demands. It doesn't make any sense to let the profits and wealth of a few thousand people dictate the future of our entire planet. In this, the richest country on the globe, it doesn't make any sense to warehouse millions of human beings in prison. It doesn't make any sense to spend $700 billion on the military and ignore the homeless, the hungry, and the poor. It doesn't make any sense to structure our schools like factories and crush the creativity of teachers and students. It doesn't make any sense to let oil companies dictate our energy policy and steer us on a crash course towards environmental catastrophe. The list could continue, but let's move forward. If we agree the way things are is not organized in the interest of the majority, we can probably also agree that you or I or anyone else we know could do a better job. So let's, right? All right. So let's take a minute then, and we'll use our imaginations to envision what the world might look like in a workers' democracy if the 1% no longer dictated our future. We'll use the words of Alexander Blok as our guide, who during the Russian Revolution reminded us that a miracle has happened. Nothing is forbidden. Almost anything might happen. We could start locally with the city of Oakland. Why should East Oakland be abandoned to liquor stores, vacant lots, and police stations, while the people living in Adams Point enjoy access to museums, parks, music, restaurants, and more? We can easily imagine that if workers ran things, everyone would have access to parks, community gardens, fresh food, and libraries, not just the chosen few. Imagine walking down the street, hearing live music, seeing free performances of poetry and plays, and rounding the corner to pick up some bright red tomatoes from the corner garden. We'd no longer need to drive everywhere in the metal coffins of the automobile era, because public transportation would be dramatically expanded and easily accessible. We could shut down the oil wells and the gas fields and build an infrastructure centered on renewable energy. And we could finally move beyond the barbarism of racism, sexism, exploitation, and war. People would have so much more free time. Think about all of the labor and resources that are currently marshaled to destroy the planet and to destroy other people. In a socialist society, we could instead focus our labor on the work that is necessary to sustain life and our planet. Unemployment would be eliminated, and countless jobs could be relegated to the historical dustbin. Weapons and manufacturing, marketing, advertising, sales, stock trading, oil drilling, and so many other jobs would no longer be necessary. Just think about how we might be able to use our free time if we only worked 4 hours a day and our imaginations were no longer stifled by the crude demands of capitalism. Education could be lifelong. It would no longer need to be constrained within the four walls of a classroom. Teachers, parents, and students could all learn together. Instead of filling out an unceasing stream of worksheets, young people could spend their time exploring, building, designing, and experimenting. Everyone could take college classes, not just the privileged few. All people could have the opportunity to reach their full human potential. That sounds like a nice vision, right? All right, so I think we have the imagination. We have the technical know-how. Everything is there to construct this dramatically different society. But at this point, some of you might have some doubt. Sure, it sounds really nice, but can we really have confidence in ourselves to run society as we've described? Is any of this even possible? Fortunately, history answers with a resounding yes. Again and again, working people have shown that a society organized in our interests would be infinitely superior to a society run in the interests of a wealthy few. In 1871, the working class seized power for the first time and established the Paris Commune in Paris, France. What did it look like with workers in charge of the city? First, I want you to imagine that you were a fishmonger or a factory worker toiling away in the French capital. Before the Commune, your life is one of endless drudgery and exploitation. But when the ruling class flees the city and the people rule, art and culture finally belong to the masses. The Louvre, which up to that point held the private art collection of the French monarchs, is finally open to the public. There are free concerts, free plays, and free culture everywhere. Even the opera is open to the poor for the first time. Education is free and mandatory. The Commune abolishes night work for the bakers, who used to rise in the dark of the night to bake croissants for the rich. An 8-hour workday is established, rent payments are suspended for several months, and pawn tools are returned to impoverished workers so that they can actually work. The military is abolished, replaced by the armed people. Parisians police themselves in their local neighborhoods, and crime nearly stops. And all of this is happening while the city is surrounded by Prussian troops and the French army. Shells and cannonballs are blowing the city to bits, and empty bellies are fed with rats from the streets. And still, the working class demonstrates the imagination and the ability to construct a radically different society, even in the midst of this death and devastation. Even general strikes demonstrate the potential of workers to run society in our own interests. Inspired by the Russian Revolution, workers around the globe engaged in a series of general strikes and uprisings. In Seattle in 1919, workers organized a general strike that brought the city to a standstill for a few days. While the papers predicted chaos and the mayor warned that there'd be mayhem in the streets, workers proved that we can run the show better than the politicians. As a union newspaper declared, labor will feed the people. Labor will care for the babies. Labor will preserve order. Not the withdrawal power, but the power of strikers to manage will win this strike. So what did this look like in practice? Each union elected rank-and-file workers to a general strike committee, which helped coordinate the strike and organize the workers. Everyday people then began the work of making the city run. The Milk Wagon Drivers Union set up 35 milk stations in neighborhoods throughout the city. Unlike a competing plan that had been put forth by business owners, they ensured that all babies continued to receive milk, not just the rich and privileged. Workers took responsibility for these types of tasks throughout the city. Although the laundry drivers were out on strike, they continued to take care of laundry from the hospital. While business owners purchased hundreds of guns and the ruling class preached the gospel of pandemonium, workers organized for peace. They set up the Labor War Veteran Guard, and disciplined veterans maintained peace in the streets without any weapons. As one member of the Veteran Guard said, "Instead of a police force with clubs, we need a Department of Public Safety whose officers will understand human nature and use brains and not brawn in keeping order." During the week of the strike, the number of arrests was cut in half, none of which was related to the strike. This is yet another reminder that when the majority rules, we don't need guns, gas, and tanks to keep the peace. Meanwhile, cooks served up to 30,000 meals a day, an enormous feat of organization and mobilization. There was a huge increase in the use of libraries, and in just a few days' time, workers once again showed that we can run society far better than the elite. Of course, we shouldn't forget one of the most important parts of this story. It's not just that workers are more capable of running society, it's that doing this work collectively and democratically makes us more human. In describing the crowds of Russia during 1917, Edward Doone said, "To call it mass hypnosis is not quite right, but the mood of the crowd was transmitted from one to another like conduction, like a spontaneous burst of laughter, joy, or anger. People were thrilled to be part of a communal, collective experience beyond the isolated individualism of daily life under capitalism." So the revolution isn't just about justice, it's also about joy. And when we think about the world that could be, that feeling of joy and the thrill of collective action should be at the forefront of our vision. A quick look at the globe around us reveals that capitalism has socialized production across the world. Now we just need to socialize everything else, from the means of production to art, culture, living space, food production, and more. That can never happen as long as society is run in the interests of a handful of bankers and billionaires. But when the majority decides to take power from the 0.00001%, we can imagine a world that is free of war, racism, poverty, and exploitation. And this must be an international endeavor, not an isolated one. We're not crazy to think that this kind of world is possible. We're crazy only if we think that sticking with the current system offers any kind of future for humanity or our planet. So our next two presenters will talk about how we can take action in our own lives and the kind of organization we need to build in order to bring this new world into being. The hour has come for the beast's end. The old dragon will coil up and die.
Thank you. That was a lovely presentation. Very creative and poetic, so I appreciate that. There's a few lazy eyes in the audience, so hopefully I don't increase that number. We just heard about the many issues and possibilities that exist in our society. But given our current situation and what we face, the question then becomes, what can we do about it? And more importantly, who's going to do it? The tendency for a lot of people today is to rely heavily on politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, unions, nonprofits, and other organizations to fix our problems. But in reality, they're not going to drastically change things for us. What we really need is to look towards ourselves and realize that we, as working people, have the power and the capacity to change things on our own. We see this on a daily basis. Every day, working people go to work and make society run. Nurses tend to the sick, transit drivers transport people to and from work, farm workers grow and harvest our food, so on and so forth. Working people are the ones that create all the wealth in our society. We're the ones that make the gears turn and keep things moving. Without us, nothing would get done. And it's because of this that we believe the working class is the only social force that has the power to change things for itself and for the rest of the world. Unfortunately, under our current system, most of the wealth that's produced from workers' labor, both physical and mental, continues to be concentrated into the hands of the rich and powerful. In the meantime, the majority of us are left to deal with our plight as working people. Many of us are forced to work long hours to make ends meet. We consistently have to fight for a living wage. We get overworked because of the understaffing at our workplaces. And some of us can't even get a job because there aren't any. In addition, our working conditions are having a tremendous impact on our quality of life. It's not uncommon for workers to suffer from fatigue, sleep deprivation, stress, and other negative effects on our health. After a long day at work, many of us just want to go home and go to bed because of how exhausted we are from working. We have no energy or time to do the things we enjoy doing, like going on hikes or spending time with our family and friends. It feels more like we live to work rather than work to live. How is this possible? How is it that the enormous amount of wealth that's created off our backs is not enough for us to enjoy our lives? Well, the main problem is that we have an unproductive capitalist class that takes it all and offers us nothing in return. They are a hindrance that's preventing us from enjoying the full fruits of our labor, and it's ultimately up to us to take back this wealth that is rightfully ours. There are many obstacles that stand in our way of achieving this goal. One of the biggest is the divisions that exist in our society, divisions that those in power use to divide the working class. Racism is one of them. As we saw in Charlottesville, Virginia, deep-seated racist groups are still very much alive in this country. They are kept alive by powerful and wealthy people who fund and support such groups to essentially divide the population on racist and bigoted ideas, and to weaken our struggle to organize against them. The attack on immigrants by people like Trump is yet another tool the elites use to divide us. They accuse immigrants of being criminals and of taking American jobs, but nothing can be farther from the truth. Apart from the indigenous population, this entire country is made up of immigrants, people that came here willingly as well as by force from all over the world. Immigrants contribute to our society and our economy. They are part of the working class, and we cannot let working people be divided. What we see politicians do on a regular basis is play the blame game. They blame everyone and everything under the sun for society's problems except themselves and the billionaires they represent. They use the old strategy of divide and conquer to pit us against each other and make us create false enemies amongst ourselves. We cannot let ourselves be divided by these tactics. This will only weaken our forces. Only by uniting ourselves can we stand up against these ruling elites of the world and their divisions. Because of the way our society is organized, we are often fed the idea that as workers, we're just that, workers. That we can't possibly understand how things function and are incapable of leading ourselves. We see this at our workplaces where we have administrators and managers who are supposedly there to guide us, to teach us how to do the work. In reality, come to us to show them how to do things. They, the bosses, make all the money and get all the privileges that come with their positions while we do all the work. And somehow we have to accept this form of exploitation? No, we don't. We must show the boss who's boss and recognize that we as workers are more than capable of managing ourselves and putting a stop to this unjust system. All these things, from our poor quality of life to the divisions that exist in our society, can often make us feel hopeless, that we can't do anything to change our situation, and that we just have to put up with things and wait for others to change things for us. But this is simply not true. Working people are able to change their circumstances, and history, as we heard, shows us that. Every now and then we see examples of how the working class is able to organize and what it's really capable of. This month marks the 100th anniversary of the 1917 Russian Revolution, when workers in Russia overthrew the Tsar and the capitalists and took power into their own hands. Once they did, they immediately got to work. They withdrew Russia from the war and offered national independence to the people under Russian colonial rule. They took over factories and industry and gave the estates of the wealthy landlords to the peasantry. They separated church and state and recognized freedom of speech and belief. Equal rights for women were established, and ordinary people had the opportunity to participate in art, culture, and politics. In the end, the Russian workers were stripped of their power by bureaucracy, but they were able to demonstrate to the rest of the world's workers how much better life can be under a workers' democracy. More recently, we saw workers go to work in Puerto Rico and Mexico City after the devastations that occurred there. While the government and politicians were busy complaining about how much it's going to cost to rebuild, ordinary people mobilized and provided real aid and assistance to those in need. They didn't wait to be told what to do. They took action and got things done themselves. It's situations like this that really show us the class of action, us the workers, and the class of inaction, the politicians and the capitalist friends. And just like people in Puerto Rico and Mexico City responded to their situations, we can also respond to the condition of our lives. But we can't wait to be hit by a hurricane or an earthquake to realize this. We can change our circumstances if we organize ourselves right now. And it starts by building networks with people around us, whether it's at our workplaces, at our schools, in our neighborhoods, wherever we may be. That's where our organizing efforts must begin. And organizing at a local level, even on a national scale, will not be enough. Capitalism is a global system. If we really want to get rid of it and have working people around the world in their interests, we must organize ourselves internationally. The fights that happen in other countries, whether it's India, Palestine, France, Spain, Brazil, you name it, is our fight too. Because the problems that working people face in these places are the exact same problems we face here at home. Organizing ourselves internationally also shows us that we are not alone in this fight and provides us with the courage that we need to stand up for ourselves. Therefore, it's essential that we build links and networks with workers from all over the world and recognize our common interest in uniting ourselves for social change. Our current situation is not set in stone. This is why we have events like this, to bring people together and to acknowledge the power working people have to overcome exploitation and the potential we have to really change society. And only by fighting inequality and oppression in all its forms can we stand up against this capitalist system that divides us and benefits only the handful of people and not the majority. Thank you.
Okay, so the perspectives put forward by the first two speakers centered on the vision of the world we can create and the importance of the working class, the social force that has the potential power to lead the fight to achieve this transformation. But it is not enough to have a critique of society's problems or even a theoretical vision of the way forward. The question that matters is how these ideas inform the political activity we choose to engage in every day. As the various speakers this weekend have shown us, the problems of capitalism are numerous, and the system will continue to attack the vast majority of the world's population due to its dependence on exploitation, massive inequality, environmental destruction, and oppression. In response to the great suffering caused by this system, social movements will continue to erupt around the world as more and more people demand change. As we saw so clearly in the film screening of Whose Streets on Friday evening about the uprisings in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, social movements are transformative experiences for those involved in them as they allow us to begin to feel our collective strength to change society. Ultimately, however, we believe that the direction these movements take, how far they go, or whether they can result in revolutionary change will be determined by the political decisions that individuals make today and the perspectives that guide their activity. We think that we as workers need to take charge of society and run it in our own interests if we are to achieve true liberation as a people. Because of this, we believe we must build revolutionary organizations within the working class internationally. Organizations which can link networks of revolutionary-minded workers and reconnect our class with socialist ideas and our rich tradition of struggle. Most importantly, however, we believe that revolutionary organizations must be built in order to play a decisive role in the social movements to come. This is extremely important because in the face of social movements, the ruling elites will do anything to stop them and maintain their system, often rebranding their political parties or supporting new political groups intended to disorient working people. In the Bay Area, we've seen this with the Democratic Party during the Trump era, helping to form groups such as Bay Resistance and the Indivisibles to channel the energy of newly politicized anti-Trump activists back into the system and into future Democratic Party congressional campaigns. On the other side, Trump's election has blurred the lines between elements of the Republican Party and extreme right groups, which are funded by the rich to keep working people divided with racist and anti-immigrant ideas and to undermine the influence of working class politics. While these groups are still marginal at this point, we must take them seriously and oppose them in numbers wherever they appear. When truly under threat, the ruling class has proven in history it will not hesitate to turn to such groups to keep its system intact. Because of these responses by the ruling class, revolutionary organizations can and will need to play a pivotal role in making sure movements do not leave political power in the hands of the bosses and bankers. Instead, arguing a perspective that ordinary people must ultimately utilize the momentum of mass movements to take control of society and trust our own forms of organization to democratically reorganize society in our own interests. In order to play a role in these crucial moments, however, we must have the utmost confidence in the organized strength of our class and have developed our own leaders who are trusted by other workers. This trust will only be earned by shared experience and proving ourselves in collective struggle long before such moments arise. This means that we cannot wait for periodic upsurges in political activity to argue our perspective and grow our forces amidst mass movements, but rather we need to engage in consistent work which will increase working class confidence and a revolutionary influence in the fights to come. To do this, we must regularly organize throughout our various workplaces, especially in times of large-scale political apathy. This is really important. This is extremely relevant in our current political climate 1 year into the Trump administration, when the majority of the left's responses to Trump's policies has been to organize mobilizations in solidarity and in opposition to these various attacks. These mobilizations are absolutely necessary to bring people together and stand in defense of those under attack in our society, but they cannot be the only thing we do. In the long term, our ability to win concrete gains and ultimately get rid of this system will be based on how confident and organized we are to go on the offensive, not just our ability to mobilize people. This organizing work is much less glamorous, and it's not going to result in the instant gratification of showing up to a one-day march or protest. But this work is necessary to build the relationships, the networks, and the trust with each other that we will need if we want to play a leadership role in social struggles down the road, and to offer these struggles a revolutionary perspective that makes it clear we need wholesale systemic change. Having established that we must build networks of revolutionary activists within and across the diverse sectors of the working class, a natural question that should arise is, what are we doing now to help make this happen? How are we engaged in revolutionary political activity in the working class? One of the main tools we use are workplace newsletters, examples of which can be found at our literature table in the back. Currently, these newsletters are in several large Bay Area hospitals and transit agencies. The newsletters are double-sided and feature one side with articles written by and with workers about problems and conditions in the particular workplace, while the other side features a political editorial presented from a working class point of view on a broader current topic like the disaster in Puerto Rico. They are designed to be organizing tools to build networks within workplaces around the newsletter and around revolutionary ideas. They can help counter the forces of isolation in the workplace by regularly reflecting the concerns of workers and providing a platform for our voices to be heard more widely. This can help start conversations among coworkers around working conditions and how we can begin to improve our situations collectively. While the newsletters are tools we use regularly, they are not all we do. We engage in fights where we are active around workplace issues, and many of us are active in our unions and contract fights when they occur and when we can find an opening. We do not believe revolutionary political activity should be limited to the workplace, however. We believe that all of us must see ourselves as organizers in our daily lives, building relationships with the people around us while arguing a political perspective different than the bankrupt options we are fed each day by the politicians and by the media. Additionally, we believe it is important to analyze the causes and solutions to society's problems in a collective manner, countering the very powerful forces in this society which make us feel like we are alone against all the attacks we are facing. Because of this, we try to be active organizing in our neighborhoods, as well as actively engaging young people in local universities and community colleges. Additionally, we are not under the illusion that a revolutionary organization can be created without coalition building and working together with other groups. The response to the recent provocations of the extreme right-wing groups in the Bay Area have shown that diverse left groups are capable of coming together to build relationships and shared experience and struggle. And we look forward to collaboration with other groups going forward as we fight together for a liberated society. It is important to understand that revolution and the construction of a socialist society will not happen instantaneously worldwide. And thus, the success of revolutionary movements will also be contingent on the strength of our international linkages, determining whether these struggles can be extended and deepened in other geographic areas of the world to fully eradicate the global system of capitalism. Connections between working class organizers must be built, therefore, internationally. And this is why we have relationships with groups in France and Germany that have spoken this weekend, and why we work to develop further relationships abroad. We need to build organizations made up of revolutionaries, those who have consciously chosen to take active part in this effort. All of us are faced with choices, and there is a role for all of us to play in this work if we decide to. We can all find a way to contribute our unique skills and experience, and together develop networks of revolutionary workers. For working people, this can mean seeing yourself as an organizer or a leader amongst your coworkers, engaging them around workplace issues, and transmitting a revolutionary perspective that we must look to ourselves as workers and take democratic control of our own struggles. For students or those coming from more middle-class backgrounds, this can mean utilizing the comparative privilege and education level you've received, not to climb the career ladder, but rather to put your abilities towards the struggle for a new society. While removing this capitalist system and replacing it with socialism may seem overwhelming and almost impossible to imagine, we have to start somewhere and begin investing real time and reflecting on what type of world we want. We in Speak Out Now, a revolutionary workers group, are convinced that the socialist transformation of society is both necessary and possible, and that the decisions made by a handful of us today will undoubtedly have an impact on the future. This is why we work actively today to create a revolutionary working class organization capable of leading the struggle to bring about the socialist revolution. This is also why we have events like this, which offer a forum to begin having these conversations and discussing how to organize ourselves. After our formal discussion here is over, stay and talk with us. We look forward to speaking with those of you who want to discuss the different steps we can all take to bring a new society into being. Thank you.
So we will now engage in conversation. Any question, comment, anything that sparked your interest. We'll do this for about a half hour or so. And of course, the people sitting up front are not the only representatives of our organization here, so we will be able to hear a little bit from other people in the audience as they see fit. So if anybody has a comment or question or anything that you're dying to tell us, now is your chance. You're going to be dying to tell us.
Hi. I had a question. I hear a lot of talk about the need to connect and collaborate with all sorts of different groups and all sorts of different people, all sorts of different nations around the world. And numbers is an extremely important thing here. And on the one hand, this seems like an insurmountable challenge because of the amount of connections that need to be made. But it also seems like how perfect that this challenge is. It's kind of made for our current time because of the technology that we have. Like, never before in history have we had the kind of resources that we have today with the internet and with Facebook and Twitter and all of these different ways of connecting. And then you can just go out and make apps, you can make websites. Like, there's so much, you can just go out and create whatever you need to connect with people. So my question is, how are specifically your group, Speak Out Now, but more like, I guess, socialist groups moreover, how are they using this kind of technology? Everyone has their own websites, I would assume. But are there certain kind of platforms, are there certain websites that's basically like, hey, let's get all the socialist organizations together and like talk about what makes this position different from this position, because there's so many different splintered factions, and what we need to do is unite them. So like, are there specific places on the web or with apps or whatever that are doing this?
I think perhaps we can take maybe like a couple more so we can clump them up and have a discussion. So one over here and then over there.
Maybe this takes it off a little more, because I'm getting very concerned about social media as somewhat of an agent of chaos that could be used against social movements as it is used for them. And how do we cope with this? Or maybe it's best to avoid too liberal of use of sites like Facebook because of the problems with the way they work.
And then third row.
Yes. Oh, that's really loud. Okay.
Now you see what happened to me.
So we talk about organizing workers in the workplace. What about members of the proletariat that are part of the surplus population? That is, those that are not working or they're working in the informal economy.
Okay, so do you guys want to tackle any of these? And then we could also
take the internet.
Yeah. You all right?
Yeah. So I'll first address the first question about kind of usage of social media and the internet within the context of this type of revolutionary politics. I would say that the response is a bit nuanced. I think that the internet and technology is a very brilliant tool in terms of the speed and kind of breadth through which we can spread ideas and find out about what's going on, across the world. We can be tapped into, labor movements and things going on internationally in a way that maybe we hadn't been able to before 100 years ago or something. So it's good in that regard, but I think using technology as a means of kind of organizational infrastructure and trying to rely on that, I think is not necessarily something we want to be trying to do. Two reasons. I think really the types of I think relationships and trust that we want to be building for the fights to come are really going to be forged in person, struggling with one another, and really based on real, pure human relationships and shared experiences, not, via Facebook and stuff like that. That's what I would say to that. And then also, I think we have to be conscious of the fact that the internet it's controlled by a certain class of individuals, and it's run in the interest of a certain class of individuals that we're directly opposed to and that we want to get rid of. So to think that we can use the internet to kind of engage in subversive action and not have that come back to bite us or be taken away from us is something we need to be thinking about. So spreading ideas, connecting with other things, really inspiring people and getting people into ideas and to think about their life and the world different, yes. In terms of a real tangible thing we're using to organize people, better in person, better, that's what we want.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
To this one?
To anything in particular?
I just wanted to address your question about trying to organize the unemployed. The question is, why do we have unemployment in the first place, right? And it's because of a capitalist economy that we live in, right? It's getting people to compete against each other for the lowest paid job. And so for us, it's like, yeah, we can definitely try to organize the unemployed too, because they can definitely have power along with the working class. It's not like we're just focusing on working class people and everyone else is excluded. I think everyone can bring something to the table and contribute in some way. So that's my response.
I would like to add to what he was just saying. I'm not going to use the mic. Is that okay? Or can I get the mic then? It's just because it's connected and I don't want to disconnect it. That's why. That's all. I think, as we were trying to explain throughout the weekend, is what we're looking at here is where does power lie in capitalist relations, right? So that's why I think we focus, for example, if you see our newsletters, we don't have newsletters in absolutely every single workplace just because we have, one for personal reasons that we have been connected to different workplaces, but also because they have influence, they have impact. As somebody might have mentioned throughout the weekend, and I don't know if you were part of that discussion, but when the BART strike happened, how much that impacted the economy of the Bay Area, you can see why it's important to organize the working class the workers of BART, right? So that doesn't mean that we discredit anybody else, that just because your impact is, less or more in terms of the capitalist relations. Of course, like he was saying, everybody has something to bring to the table, but as small groups of people, we need to be strategic about where we organize, and we can't organize, the mom and pop shop barista who thinks he wants to be a revolutionary. If he wants to be a revolutionary, he can help us go and organize other people who might have a more pivotal role to play in terms of their impact to the economy altogether. So I think that's one of the reasons why, but that doesn't discard that everybody, of course, can participate in revolutionary struggle. I see a hand all the way in the back.
Just to add a couple notes on that topic, we're all part of the working class, and in fact, the working class isn't necessarily such a precise term because you can be part of the working class and not have a job. What defines us as workers is that we're not kings, we're not capitalists, we don't have property, we have no rights to property, to existence in the world. All we can do is sell our labor. So whether you're a barista, or you're an auto worker, or you're a K-12 teacher, or you're unemployed and homeless, you are in the condition of what Marx called the proletariat, people who do not have property, do not have access to the means of production, and therefore must sell their labor. And that's really why I think the 99%, that idea, that slogan, we have to see from the standpoint of our whole class, the whole working class, what the points of leverage are and where we can attack the system. And that's the key workplaces. But really, as the French have a saying, is tous ensemble, everyone together. We really are the 99%, all of us who are being pushed out by capitalism and made irrelevant. So if they try to divide us, oh, you're the surplus population, whereas you're the workers, and you're this and you're that, no, that's not the issue. The issue is that we're the dispossessed, we're the proletariat, we're the working class.
Can you please describe a little more how it might come to be that we move from the organizing work that we're talking about and the vision that we're talking about, particularly in the context of global warming and climate issues. And do we have any contacts with people who are working in the fossil fuel industry as part of that? One of the things that I often hear is there's no time to get beyond capitalism because we really have just a few years left on climate. And I certainly have things I say in response, but I really like your vision of how is it actually going to happen, tangibly, specifically in the context of climate. I know it's a hard one.
Any other hands in the audience? No more questions?
Another question. Never mind, go ahead.
Go ahead. Right there.
Okay, so this is a little more off the wall. So maybe it would be tough to fit this in with the environment question that just came up. But I've had this idea bouncing around in my head for a little while of what it would look like if there were a San Francisco Bay Area Soviet a democratic structure where the working people were able to organize themselves into to pass resolutions and to say that the mandate from the people demands that we create police oversight committees, and that would be something that wouldn't necessarily be subject to the levers of power that are often used to manipulate the perceived public opinion. And so what it's not is necessarily like some kind of catch-all socialist umbrella, but it would really be just a general, large-scale, somehow organized, and I don't really have a clear idea of how that would happen, but democratic, non-government organized democratic structure. What would that look like? Is that something that could be effective? Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I have another hand over here. Raise your hand so she knows that it's you.
So, I've come to a lot of these kinds of events over the years, and one thing that I notice a lot of them have in common is we really get wrapped up in the nebulous world of ideas, and that's in and of itself not a bad thing. Looking at a hypothetical Soviet like this category you're talking about, that's stuff that we should think about. But I know that this is something that y'all talk about. Is when we're out there organizing workers and not just leftists, what is it that we bring to the table that attracts them into all ranks of the workers' movement? So can you talk a little bit about like what concretely we should be doing as historical agents of social transformation when we're not just talking to the converted at our workplaces?
I'm gonna get some from here, and then I'm gonna send that right back to you. Okay? So do you guys wanna?
Good.
All right, cool. So I think the first two questions are somewhat linked because you said, how do we move from organization to vision? And I think our politics is utmost confidence in workers, the majority, to decide things. And so I don't know that we necessarily get to plan that ahead. That's for the people to decide as they move forward with the movement. And so we can't necessarily map it all out and say, oh, this is what you're going to do, because I think that's the opposite of a democratic vision. And I think the Bay Area Soviet, I think the same thing there, right? We're not going to get to decide what are the mechanisms or the organizations that working people are building ahead of time. That's for us to, it's for people to decide when we reach that point, not for us to not necessarily map it out ahead of time. And you mentioned the police oversight committee, so I just thought I would throw one more thing out there. We don't want to oversee the police, we want to abolish them completely. We don't need them. The only reason that we have a police force is because there are a very, very tiny, small number of people that are dominating. It's the 99.999%. That's the only reason that they exist. And so we seek to establish a world in which we abolish the police, because we can run society for ourselves and we can police ourselves and run things in the interest of the majority. So I don't know if that kind of tackles both those questions, but I think part of it is we can't map everything out ahead of time because each struggle has to decide for itself how to proceed, and the people that are struggling get to decide. The people that are in the struggle get to decide.
Mm-hmm. You guys
And
want
the
to go?
people, do you have anything else in the muscle feelings that you're just learning?
Got it.
Okay.
We'll not forget about that one. But do you guys want to?
To address your question of how we connect with workers, he mentioned earlier there are newsletters, and that's really the main way we try to connect with workers, because workers, the main thing they focus on is workplace issues, because that's really the biggest issue in their minds. Like, how can I improve my life? How can I get a better paying job? How can I get more benefits? So for us to have these newsletters that really reflect their conditions there, it really connects with them. And so we have two sides. We have one side where it talks about that, and the front side is more of a global political issue that's happening, because we also want to not just talk about workplace issues, but bring it outside and connect with them politically in a global way. So that's what we try to do. It can be very hard because a lot of workers, they just want to go to work and then go home and that's it, But I think it's something that we have to do. If we really want to organize the working class, we have to be with the workers and we have to organize them. So yeah.
If I may.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
No, go ahead.
I think that his answer is one of the tools that we have as an organization that we put forth and that we, do consistently. And I think it does have really good feedback from people in the workplaces. They really like it. They think it's wonderful to have something that reflects how they feel, because as you might know already, it's very hard to find that anywhere else, right? There's no real avenue in which people can actually communicate how they feel about what's going on at work. If anything, it's the culture of just get in and get out. But individually, I think, and I think that's something that everybody in this room can already start to do, is I think one of the first steps to build something bigger is to break the isolation and the individualism that we face and that we are taught to behave in, basically. So, for example, if you're in your workplace, you start noticing that something is wrong, if your first reaction is, I'm going to go fix it myself, that's a major issue that we see. So what we try to do is immediately try to see how we can do those changes collectively, whether big or small, which is what my comrade here was saying. It's not very glamorous to say, I'm going to go and try to fight for the typical thing is more toilet paper in the bathroom. Yeah, it seems very meager, it seems very soapboxy, and here we are leading a revolution. But the minute people start seeing that they can collaborate with each other, that they can work together. I have my coworkers say that to me all the time. I'm the youngest one, everybody else has been working there for 20 years. And since I started working there, this is not at all me, it's my political views. I started to have people do things collectively, and they had never done that before. And it changes things immediately for them. Instead of sending your own, grievance to the union, let's all sign it together. Instead of you going to talk to management by yourself, can I go with you? Instead of feeling upset about the Trump inauguration, can we have something where we all get together and talk about these issues and have solidarity with each other, basically. Create those spaces that are so foreign that we don't know about. And again, I'm not telling you, it's going to sound so cool and I'm immediately going to tell people, and then we're overthrowing capitalism the next day. No, but I got to tell you, it really changes the way people feel about themselves, about each other, and it begins to, and then the conversations start happening naturally, because what happens in one workplace can be translated to the whole system. We know that those structures, the management telling you everything that you need to do, even though you know how to do it better, happens in government too, right? It's exactly the same thing. And I think that that's what we're saying. That the newsletter is just one of the many tools that we can use for that. And of course, bringing political articles, talking to people about what's going on in the world, et cetera, are things that are going against the current of what we're told. Get to work, sit down, do the most minimal amount that you can do, and then go home as quickly as possible, if not stop and shop somewhere. Right? So I think that that's one example I can give you that's pretty concrete as to what each one of us can go tomorrow and do. What's wrong? How can we fix it? Not just by myself. I want somebody else to do it with me. 4 people is even better.
Sorry, back all the way.
Really, I wanted to-
Yeah, go ahead and then another one.
Really quick, I didn't want Carol's question about the fossil fuel industry to kind of float away, so I didn't know if anyone in the audience wanted to speak to that directly. Yeah.
Okay. No. Can we have? I'll put you up in the list. So have him go, and then you can go.
Okay, we'll double team it. All right. So
Oh.
I think one thing
That's not what I wanted.
a lot of, and it's a little bit to address the first question I already did. The first question that was asked about how there are all these groups and how can people work together. So we've been very active around environmental issues. We've helped to organize 3 coalitions and 3 demonstrations and rallies in the Bay Area. And that has really been one of the few places where I would say many of the left groups and the environmental groups have come together and really done a collective action. But what has made it different for us, I think, than most of the other groups, is that we've used that time to go to the workplaces where we are, to go to bar stations, to go to working class farmers markets with information about the environment and with information about the environmental march, because usually that kind of information is left in the universities or in the more middle class areas of town. And we've had very interesting discussions and very interesting reactions. One of the things we also have done twice, maybe more, is get on BART, the transportation system, and each person in each car gives a speech about problems with the environment, and then we hand out leaflets. So by doing that, even, and this was what we said when I was at the community college, if we can get 100 people to come to the march, we want 1,000 people to know about what the problem is and what we can do about it. And so we tabled in the community college and had many discussions with working class people about the problems. And one of the problems that I know you're very familiar with was the problem of jobs. Is it jobs or clean air? Is it jobs or, destroying the environment? And that's something also we can discuss with people a lot. And that the problems of the environment and the problems of the ecology movement are not for some other group of people, but they're absolutely key. And the people who hold the answer to changing that are exactly the people who work in the oil companies and the other. I wish I could say to you that we have a newsletter at Chevron, and that we have an actual intervention in some of those workplaces. We don't, but I think what we've contributed to the environmental movement here is really taking those questions in a totally different milieu and really using that. We have a fracking pamphlet, we have a pamphlet on the environment, we have Carol's wonderful articles, and those are really disseminated, in front of the workplaces and engaged in discussions that I think otherwise wouldn't have happened.
So I have you all the way in the back. If you don't mind, I'll put you on the list so we can. There's other questions that haven't been addressed yet. If you don't mind, I'm gonna have you say your sentence. Don't worry, I'll be sure to give you that time. No. Him. Him, and I have you two on the list, but I want him to answer his question.
See if I need it. So the newsletter is a really useful tool that can also be an obstacle if we think that the piece of paper takes care of it. Because yes, it's very popular, people like it, people always like things done for them. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the challenges that we face, especially if we were just to rely on the newsletter. The newsletter does play a very important role because it can help break down isolation, because it reflects on issues that sometimes people think are just their own, and we hope that it reflects general and specific ideas and problems that people are confronting. Not everybody is interested in the questions of their workplace, so that's one thing. So we want to have the more general political articles. But I think the thing the sister said is the most important thing. A piece of paper cannot lead a struggle. It has to be the relationships that we built up. We can't just be only interested in what we're interested in, because we commonly see this amongst people who become the experts and they're going to lead the working class, and it's not going to work. We have to be interested in what people's lives are. If you're not interested in your own species, then we should be involved in some other aspects of work. Maybe, and there are important things to do, but we have to be interested in what people around us are interested in, because they all link in this society to the functioning of capitalism. Failing relationships, long commutes, all that. But we don't want to have all these the same answer. It's capitalism, it's capitalism. Long commute. Why don't we meet up halfway? We'll have a coffee or a beer or whatever, only one, and then continue on home. So have those discussions. Know if people have kids. Be interested in those kind of things. All the questions that people confront. How are things at your school? Quite often we reduce people to what the capitalists have reduced us to, and that is people who are doing something in the workplace. Guess what? We're full human beings, and as the brother said, we do not want to live to work. We want to live, we want to work to live. So we have lives outside of that. We have all sorts of interests. And when those people who take those ideas home don't stop talking to their brothers or sisters who might work in the chemical industry or the, Chevron or whatever. So we have a way to build networks, broad networks. There are strikes here, there's a fight there. Somebody says, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about contract stuff. So, you end up meeting with people because their sister got fired. Okay, so we do that. And there are social struggles. There are things that happen in neighborhoods. We had an episode of violence that was very close to us, a number of us in this room, of a little 3-year-old who got shot in a drive-by. He wasn't dealing drugs. It was just the problem was that people, just sort of open up on the street, they're aiming at somebody and there's a misfired bullet. That brought a lot of us together, linked us with a whole range of people. We didn't make the revolution, we didn't end violence in Oakland, but it was an absolutely important experience, and we built other relationships. And as revolutionaries, we can't pick and choose the fights. There's absolutely a moral responsibility for us to stand up with the friends whose family member was killed and do what we had to do. That's what our politics means, and it will lead, we hope, to making a revolution.
Okay, so I have you who's holding the mic, then I have the person in the back, and then I have you, and I have you, okay? So everybody's there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say really fast that it's also this recognition that, the revolution is about joy, as I kind of already touched on. That's why we have barbecues and holiday parties as well, so that we can bring our coworkers or our parts of our cohort or our friends or family that can be kind of eased into it in a different way, or get connected to something that's a big part of our lives in a different way, but making it a human experience as well.
I think a couple people said what I wanted to say about the workplace, but I think what's really important too is not only go out and do these things on your own, but what I find really valuable is being able to be part of an organization where I can talk about my attempts and what I could have done better, or learning from other people and their attempts, and being like, okay, they can do it, it's possible. I need to motivate myself from their ability to do that, so I can try, get the influence. It's not that hard. Share the experience and say we're actually in this together, and you're not just going to be the isolated one activist. That's why I think when we say build an organization, we mean, build an organization with us or this part of that group.
Okay, green in the back. Yeah.
So I had two things. One is just really small to answer Carol. I so wish that we had people in the fossil fuel industry. We've got 5 refineries, we've got the ports, we've got railroads. I mean, we could really shut down and transform the way that we use these things if we had an influence in these places. And so that's why we need to grow, clearly. But also I wanted to talk about something that happened in my workplace. I'm a teacher, and we had a head who was more and more over the years detested. He fired a whole bunch of people. He decided to lower people, give no increase to these people and give big increases to those people. And more over a period of 4 years, he became thoroughly and profoundly detested. But everyone, of course, was very afraid because he had the habit of firing people. So who was going to be the one? And eventually he fired someone, and it was the straw that broke the camel's back, and we organized and we managed to get him kicked out. And in the process of doing that, we saw who was willing to step forward. We saw who we could trust. We saw that actually there were a lot of people we could trust. We saw that there were some people that was perhaps better not to trust. And we really got a sense of where we stood. And we were in a terrible place before, and trying to make it work. And when he finally left, I mean, you cannot believe, well, maybe you can, the joy was just extraordinary. And this, people kept on saying over and over again, we were fucked and we lost these wages. We have never had more community than we have right now at our school. We have never been closer than we are right now at our school. So what has that meant since then? Well, the people who lost their wages, actually not immediately, but they got their lost wages back. There are people right now who are pissed off because some people don't have as long maternity leaves as other people, and it's absolutely unjust. But instead of just going, it's not fair, let's go home and have a beer, people are actually doing something about it because they have that confidence that people are talking about. Knowing each other, understanding each other, and having that confidence, can be real. And I just wanted to add to that, we're teachers, and a lot of the people that I work with see themselves as relatively privileged in this world, and some of them see themselves as very privileged in this world, and don't identify as people of the working class. And this fight changed that also. So not for everyone, of course, but for many, many people, it changed the way they see themselves in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So
wonderful. So you over here, you wanted to give your comment, right here. It always happens.
Congratulations to you for being able to do that. And anyway, in response to an issue that Carol raised, I think that in a capitalist economy, boycotts are extremely effective because it hits the bottom line and their profits. So I think we should all brainstorm on how we can run a boycott against the fossil fuel industry. I mean, I have some ideas, but it would be better if we decided as a group.
And then I have one comment over here in the front, and then maybe I'll allow the speakers to give some final thoughts right here.
Just some thoughts I have about fossil fuel industry and how to deal with it. One thing about it is the modern fossil fuel industry isn't like the old-time factories where there's great numbers of workers. They're very capital intensive, but only very small amounts of labor force. And you go to the refinery in Richmond, the actual on-site labor force is very small. They use contract workers, and maybe those are something to look at. And you've heard the stories about the Keystone Pipeline that there'll be jobs and it's built, but once it's built, it'll be probably only 50 people to maintain it. Now, I suppose what they mean is 50 people in a capitalist way, which is maybe a very unsafe way to maintain such a thing. But that's it. And then we're also, the fastest growing part of the energy sector, job-wise, are the renewables. But what's going on in those renewables? What are does anybody know any of the workers that are putting up solar panels? Who are they? What are they? Are they gig workers? What's their working conditions? So what do they have to say about their lives? And another thing, and I've heard this said, that the workers in the Tesla factories have some of the grimmest working conditions. I mean, you have people who are running those businesses that have 19th century ideas, going back, to Dickens about how you run a factory. And, are we, I guess if somebody knows or and maybe, talk to some Tesla workers.
I think we know
get
someone.
the idea. That might be a good thing to do.
Okay, so I did have some more hands that were raised, so I'm going to go for all the way in the back and then right here in the middle.
Well, I wanted to say one thing about, because it came up a few times, this idea, what would we do if, because I think what we can see is we inherit a capitalist society post-revolution, no matter what. And it's true the nuances of that, how it gets organized, and the priority of which things get done first, nobody can predict such a thing. But we can absolutely see that the fundamental problems that we inherit are the problems that capitalism has left for us to deal with. And the main thing we're going to be doing is getting rid of those problems first and foremost. The problems of housing, the problems of education, the problems of transportation, the problems of energy, which order precisely those things. But that is fundamentally the beginning of the task, is to get rid of the problems that capitalism has sort of left us with. Thank you.
Okay, so here in the middle.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to my friend's remarks over here. So I think the job of revolutionaries is so the job of revolutionaries, we want to respond to the concerns of working class people. So maybe it's going to have nothing to do with where we work. Maybe it's going to have to do with a police shooting, violence, lack of health care, responding to a natural disaster. But as revolutionaries, we want to be able to present to them a political understanding of the situation we're in, and then also organizational know-how and great tools for them to combat the situation that we're in. So at the end of the day, we want to be, the light at the end of the tunnel to show the way forward.
So I think a few people up here want to say a few final comments, and we're cutting it a little bit short, not because we don't think that this is fruitful, but because we also have some socializing that we can do where we can further these conversations that I'm sure are going to be happening. So
I just want to thank everyone who came out this weekend to attend our Revolutionary University. But I want to emphasize to people that the RU is not a solution to our problems. If you look at our program, it's a tools for changing society.
false advertising.
False
I'm just
advertising.
kidding.
What really counts and what really matters is what happens after this. After we eat our pizza and drink our beer, we're just going to go home and say we did it, or are we really going to try to do something? I really hope that people don't just disappear and come back next year for our RU and
Before next year, come back.
Yeah, come back before, because that's really what we need right now if we really want to change society.
Yeah, my final kind of remarks are in a similar vein. I think, there are a lot of questions raised about, where we could be. Do we know, what workers here or there are doing? And I think that the answer is that's if we really take ourselves seriously and think that we're going to, be able to change the society, these are all things that we're going to need to get to and grow. And really, in thinking about the central premise of the politics is that we need to start taking charge of our own lives, and we need to go out and do it for ourselves. No one's going to do it for us. And I think in a lot of ways, we're all waiting on each other. And if, we all can make choices in our lives, and if we, choose to plant our flag, choose to, be there and really show people, what we are and what we represent, and embody that in the way we act and what we do, I think really we can see this blossom, and this is really how movements happen. But the question is, what choice are you going to make, and how are you going to consciously, be in the world? So.